Okay, there's Susan.
What you want to do is zoom in all the way and then manually zoom in.
And the mics don't have volume.
Okay.
Some cameras do, yeah. That one doesn't. My camera, the Canon, yes, has both record level and then headphone level too.
Okay, Susan, I have you now.
Yeah,
great.
Now you're the interview subject.
What do you want to know?
What do you think of cell phones?
Not much.
I thought so. You gave a little grimace earlier when someone mentioned something. So, but you're also interested in this conference coming up?
Yes, I am. I'm possibly attending. Time to think about it.
If it was a bright day, would you want to have Susan sitting there?
Because the sun.
Oh, the sun, right. Well, right now,
Oh,
it's
yes.
I
okay.
know, that's why I pressed it.
Susan, so you're thinking of going to London. What's stopping you?
Oh, finances.
You
know.
Yeah, we're working on that. We don't know. We might get lucky soon. We applied for grant and funding.
Well, it would be taking time off. Susan is going?
Susan's going, so what is it taking time off of?
It would be taking time off from work that I won't get paid.
Are you here to visit?
You know, plus the expenses of going. So, and
what were you?
I guess I would find it hard to go for just 4 or 5 days, having a lot of family over there. So
That's hard.
if I'm going, it'll probably be 10 days or more.
Expand.
Right. What kind of work are you doing that you have to take off?
Well, it's not a big deal taking it off. I'm basically doing per diem work, so it's, if I take diems off, I don't get paid.
Okay.
No, I work by the hour too. It's rough. So we're gonna find money. We're gonna get
putting it in the wrong way. The job.
That would be great.
We're trying to. Maybe we'll get it. But that should be on tape. So I better. Is it on standby now?
No, it's just in standby too long. You weren't doing anything.
I thought, this is from England. This must be you. Because this is about the...
There are lots.
There are lots of Davids, I figured that much.
Okay, David, what were you saying? You were telling us about Berlin?
Yes, shall I tell you about my father's favourite toy? It's always a nice Berlin story. This German 1920s tin plate toys are very collectible today. Back in the 20s, my father was given proudly a brand new tin plate toy. It was a beautiful German submarine.
Oh.
So he took it down to the lake near where he lived, put it in the lake, because it was a nice exciting birthday present, and of course like a submarine it went under the water. And strangely enough he never saw it again.
No, that's too bad. That could be valuable.
Today if you had a German tin plate submarine from the 20s it would be quite valuable because they sell for high prices. But
he probably wouldn't have brought it out with him even.
no, but everything they brought was supposedly burnt up or stolen, so they got nothing.
Where was it burnt up or stolen?
At the port. Because his parents also came out.
And who stole it?
And I want
to... I'm not sure of the story. I believe it might have been destroyed in bombing at the port. Might have been stolen by Nazis. Don't know.
So you have nothing that your parents brought from Berlin?
No, they have plenty they brought. But all their personal possessions, their furniture, their paintings, their other things, they didn't have. What they weren't allowed to take with them were valuables, gold, jewellery, money. But they could take clothes. So what my grandparents did was they bought the most expensive clothes they could possibly get. So the most expensive coats they could get were big, heavy English wool. They're totally unwearable. They might be suitable in a Russian winter or something like that. But they are totally unwearable. My father still has them. They're wonderful, nice, ultra unwearable coats.
It's not recording.
Yeah.
It's in standby mode.
Okay.
2 years ago that he was going to this reunion. She said, "Oh, I'm
The power is on, and it's just waiting for you to tell it to
tomorrow and
record.
say I decided to go, she may just say I'll
how
go
would you
too.
do it when you...
And then she'd probably, normally when things like this happen, she'll say like, I'll pay for the hotel room and we'll split it. Because
That one recorded?
Yes.
is your mom going?
Pressing it
The
now.
whole family's going. It's
Okay.
bizarre.
I'm
They
not
were
gonna
never
do it.
interested. So
Okay.
So they got interested through you.
Yeah.
So who should I interview?
So, and who's the kind?
My mother is.
So when you say your whole family, who else
It's like
is going?
family. I have 3 brothers and sisters. So all 4
Really?
kids are going.
And your mom's picking up tabs?
She just retired, I guess. I guess she feels like it. I don't know. Yeah. But we're hoping to get something back. I don't know if we will. We don't. Grandpa was also so late. Probably nothing will happen, but I hope so. To get some of the flight and houses. Oh, are we on
Wendy.
TV?
You're on telly.
Yes, telly. I don't really watch this stuff.
You do accents quite well.
Yes.
So,
it's from my mother, you know. She lived in England.
oh, she did, didn't she?
David will get us that $5,000. That would be nice.
David should. Don't you think David should get us a
Yeah, but has everyone joined signed up for the KTA website?
I sent it out to like
It's not,
5,000.
you won't get any mail from it. It's just every one person that adds, even if you make your friends add, is a 25% increase because it was so small when we first started.
So, Mark, how are things going? So tell me
I know, I
something or
haven't
ask
yet
something.
either.
Oh, no, you're interviewing me.
I'm interviewing you. So, what's this $5,000 deal?
I don't know. That's my left ear. I don't know about that.
That's nothing you know about it. Okay, so why do you think your mother's going for the first time?
Why she's what?
Why is she going for the first time to?
Oh, sorry. Well, she's not actually. She's not going to the big reunion. She hates large things.
Oh, she's just going for vacation?
No. Her smaller group of that got out of Germany together. They're meeting on that following weekend. So we're leaving together. So actually, she's leaving in time to go to the big thing, but she hates stuff like that in the hotel. She's allergic to that. So we're just going.
Oh, I didn't.
She's just gonna go to the small reunion.
Right.
Which I think would be cool to see her at the big one, and maybe she meet people.
I've been meaning to do it, but I just never got around to writing a letter.
That sounds like my mother.
Yeah, like a lot of them, but you had a lot of them go, but yeah,
my mother says, "Why would you want to? Why would I want to do that? I don't know anyone."
Yeah.
The one I was
That's what my mother says.
And probably I don't blame her. Probably it's filled with these disgusting speeches and dignitaries, and who needs that?
Right. But what I tell her is a lot of these people you don't know are from New York, and you might, I would imagine, and you might get to know them. But that doesn't make a dent in her consciousness.
No, unless you just take her. Why don't you say, "Hey, Mom, I got a plane ticket for you."
Well, there is the other problem. She doesn't want to fly.
Oh, well, I got a boat ticket for you, just like how you got here originally.
That I don't know if I want to go with. I said I want to go with her, but I don't want to go by boat.
No, send someone else with her then. You just fly. Send her a couple weeks earlier by boat. For days. No, I'm excited about going. I'm a bit stressed because my schedule here is so full now that...
Oh, so it's going well? You're freelance researching?
No, I've had to cut back on that because I started Oriental Medicine School.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But that's fine, huh?
Yeah, you're right.
No, see, that's all my notes. At the same time we're having this meeting, I'm looking about different pulses.
Oh, okay. How long is this program going to take you?
About 4 years. It's like med school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this is your first year?
Yeah.
And what are the prerequisites for it?
Well, you could do them while you're there. A lot of biosciences.
Okay.
Which, is hard stuff. I don't have a science background.
I mean, you wouldn't need the pre-med courses prior to entering...
No, not anymore. Like I'm doing everything there. No, anatomy, physio, everything you could do while you're in the program.
Now, is this
Right.
Is that lady in the bathroom?
Is this
A lady in the bathroom.
Okay. Is this run by?
Sounds frightening.
Is this an old school, a new school?
No, it started in California, and they have a New York branch that just opened up pretty recently.
And is it run by Asian acupuncturists mainly?
No, I guess it's a business. No, I mean they have some teachers who are Asian, some who are not Asian. And
do you get a degree or certificate?
It's a master's program, and then you sit for boards and state exams, and you get a licensed acupuncturist.
Oh, okay. And then you can hang up a shingle, or how does that work?
Hang up a shingle, you can stick needles in people. Legitimately. And give them herbs,
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your motivation for going to acupuncture school?
I guess I've been interested in healing arts for a while and around that. And then I was working at an acupuncturist office for a while.
Right.
So I thought, why not? And I'm tired of always being in debt,
Do acupuncturists do well financially?
I guess it's all relative. You know, I was working in nonprofits for years, and
I
begin to describe that situation, but yeah, well enough.
But, you know,
it depends what kind of work you do.
There's certain areas that she
but
just
it's
doesn't know
salary.
what to do, and it makes
That's not why I did it, but it's a consideration as you get older that you want to have a salary coming in.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but it's because of that kind of work and profession.
I will. This summer when I'm not working, I'll.
Very interesting. That sounds, and you have.
How do you feel about it?
No.
It's just like over the.
I'm going to now hand this off to
It's kind of
David. It's actually kind of heavy.
It's just getting
suddenly making the decision
this is
that, you know, this is a good priority.
This is why you need a tripod.
So Susan's coming. Did you talk?
I feel like I need to do some weightlifting after a while.
Susan's coming. Is that the rumor?
This is Deborah.
Oh no, this isn't the shoulder strap.
Yeah, she said Susan's coming.
I think she was talking about a different Susan.
Okay.
She doesn't know me.
Oh, she doesn't need to know you to talk about
I
you.
don't know.
Wow, what a difference.
Deborah Oppenheimer doesn't know.
I said she told us that Susan's coming.
The rumors travel.
Interesting thing I noticed. I was starting to talk. I was talking to you, and I stopped looking at the in the viewfinder.
Oh, shit.
And then because I was talking, you were half cropped off, so you have to get. So I guess if you're doing
Handheld.
you always have to look through.
Yes, if you're handheld, you always have to look through. And you also shake a lot, which you'll notice.
I didn't feel like I was shaking. It's just I felt it was probably just the breathing.
That's the power.
You have family there, and it's probably maybe it's not as hot as New York.
Yeah, it'll be refreshing.
That's a lot of money to spend, a lot to do to cool down. Last
true.
weekend
There's
I went 70 miles into New Jersey and went camping, and that was.
Where'd you go?
That's kind of embarrassing. I went into my friend's car and I got out when it stopped. I don't even
Yeah, I do
know.
think that's very nice.
Route 80 to exit 12, and then
I was Route 80 the other day after Montclair. I had to go to Montclair for something.
Hope. We were right just near Hope.
Well, that sounds good.
Oh, yeah, that's near the Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. That's
Yeah.
I've been.
That's pretty. A
That's-
friend of
yeah,
my mother's got a farm there, and
It's a very nice
lovely.
area.
it was the first time I realized that New Jersey could be really nice.
Right?
No, but
You need
Hope's
things
on the
like that.
Pennsylvania
Yes,
side.
it's on the New
Oh,
Jersey
this is New
side.
Jersey side.
Oh, okay.
That's great.
I mean, once you get off the New Jersey Turnpike, you're fine. It's like all these people who are shocked at how much beauty there is in New York State.
Yeah, or even
But there's a difference between New York State and Jersey.
What's the difference?
Jersey is a landfill of pollution.
Oh, near us, New Jersey.
Yeah,
near
it's a
us.
dumping pit of
Skies are
nasty.
strange colors, and it's just
No, but
toxic.
she's talking about west.
But I mean, that's what I perceive. I know it's like
Anita?
Why am I here today?
she's from Munich.
I heard that it was a good group of people coming over.
What's her name? Rebecca what?
Golfers.
Dufford.
And so what's your impression on the weather?
My question on the weather?
Your impression?
I think it's hot. It's definitely hot, but it's cooling down.
You're still planning on going to London?
I'm planning on going to London as strongly as I was 2 weeks ago.
What's the weather been like in this city in the last few days?
It's been very hot.
What's
Hot
the
enough to make me say, this is the year I buy a new air conditioner.
And what's the weather been like in London?
I forgot to check the internet, but I will do that.
The last few days it's been cold and rainy.
Now, would I rather have hot and muggy and sunny or cold and rainy? Gee, these are tough choices. How cold?
So no, I just got details of very cold,
Uh-huh.
not pleasant.
And this is to encourage me to go?
I'm a Luddite, can't help it.
Oh, okay. This is the kinder. Oh, I see.
Yeah. Well, when I get a door on that.
And so, how old were you when you first knew that you were the child of a Kindertransport survivor?
It's one of those things I always knew. I don't know that as a 4-year-old I knew it was Kindertransport, but I knew that my mom had escaped Germany as a child,
The book contains.
and gone to England. Which is, I guess, the usual, especially since my grandparents didn't survive, the usual questions. How come Judy has a grandma and grandpa and I don't? Led to discussions at a child's level.
Did she tell you what her childhood was like?
Not very much. I'm hoping to learn more from somebody interviewing her, because maybe it'll get her to tell things she's...
It is 8 in the morning on Thursday, June 17th in London at the reunion, the 60th year reunion of the Kindertransport. And this is Melissa Hacker doing an interview. And may I have your name?
George Shefi.
And how do you spell that?
George, G-E-O-R-G-E, Shefi, S-H-E-F-I.
And is that your the name you were born with?
No.
What was your original name?
Spiegelglas.
And how do you spell that?
S-P-I-E-G-E-L-G-L-A-S.
And where were you born?
Berlin.
And when were you born?
On the 29th of the 11th, 1931.
29th of the 11th, November.
Yes.
Okay. 1931 or 20?
Yes.
31. And what were the names of your parents?
My mother's name was Maria, and my father's name was Alexander.
And were you an only child?
Yes. No, well, on my mother's side, yes, not on my father's side. See, it's a little bit complicated. It was my parents were divorced when I was 1 year old. And that's maybe farther on in the interview will come to it. I found my father in Australia 30-some years later. And that was when I met him, that was the first time that I ever saw him.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And what part of Berlin did you live in?
In Schöneberg.
And what kind of a neighborhood is that?
Okay.
I mean, is it
It's close to the center of Berlin, this is true. But it was on the main highway, we were on the main street. Mm-hmm. And it was called the main street.
Mm-hmm. And so your parents were divorced when you were 1, you don't remember living with your parents together?
Oh, I remember living with my mother.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in her father's apartment. And then we lived there until I left.
And what did your mother do?
She stayed and she worked in a forced labor in a factory, but was still living in Berlin someplace. And then in the beginning of 1943, she was put on a train and ended up in Auschwitz.
But when you were young, what was the work she was doing to support you?
By profession, she was a dressmaker, but she couldn't work. And her sister, big sister, my aunt, she was working as a saleswoman in a shoe store, very famous shoe store in a chain in Berlin. And she worked there, and she actually, earned money for the family, because my grandfather was still alive at that time too. And about 1938 or 37, I don't know exactly when, she was forced to quit her job, but the owner was so pleased with her work, said, look, I'm awfully sorry, I can't keep you up as a saleswoman, but I'll give you a job downstairs in the store where nobody will see you. And this, I don't know how long she did.
What was the name of the shoe store?
Tuck, I think.
Mm-hmm. And so you were living in your grandfather's apartment with
Yes.
your mother and your aunt?
Yes.
And were there other people living there as well?
No.
And did you have maids or?
No. We were very, very, I wouldn't say, well, quite poor family at that time. So I don't remember, I don't forget, I only remember the Nazi period, I don't know what was before.
Mm-hmm. What is your earliest memory?
I think when I was about 3 years old, I went to visit the younger sister, my mother, who had married into quite a wealthy family, and they had a nice lakeside apartment, or house to be exact. And I visited there. I remember once there was a very famous German boxer by the name of Max Schmeling. He was the world champion at one time, I think. I remember his house burned down and we went to see it. That's one recollection I have.
His house burned down naturally, or?
Yeah, I think so. And another recollection I have is seeing the asparagus fields in the vicinity. It was outside of the city. And another recollection I have that I ate too much chocolate and I was awfully sick in bed and I didn't know what to do. But those are sort of pinpoints, that of recollection, and they're not connected one to the other.
Mm-hmm. And did you go to a local public school or?
Well, don't forget, I was small, and I only started school at the end of 38.
Oh, I see.
And maybe 2 months later, I don't know exactly when I started school, but on Crystal Night, the school was burnt down together with the synagogue because they were adjacent one to the other.
So it was a Jewish school?
It was a Jewish school, yes.
And do you remember, how did you find out that the school had burnt down?
Well, I was put in another. First of all, I couldn't go out. My mother didn't let me out for 3 days, out of the house, out of the apartment. And I went to another school. So something happened.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember your mother and your aunt and your grandfather talking about, was there an atmosphere that changed in the house?
I was a very, very preserved child because I was, I think, one of the only, except for one son of a brother of my mother's who was living in the States since 1919 and was older than I was. I was sort of the apple of the eye of the whole family from my grandfather down. And I have letters, I don't have them here with me, but all the letters mention me that if anybody has to be saved, it's me. And because my family didn't have money, they knew that they'd never get out, most likely, because all the letters I have, which were translated, they all sound the same tune. As a matter of fact, there was a correspondence between my mother and my uncle in the States after I already was in England, because the war between America and Germany only started 2.25 years after the war started with the English. So I didn't receive any letters from my mother, but my uncle in the States until December 41 did receive letters, and they were very tragic because then they were already in forced labor. And I mean, my grandfather died still at home, and my mother couldn't even go to the funeral or something like that because she had to work. And I know that she wrote they didn't have enough money to put up a tombstone, which I hope I still will be able to do if I can find the grave. I have decided in it, yes.
And it would be somewhere in maybe the Jewish cemetery in Berlin?
Yes. I don't know where, I have no idea, I've never looked for it, anything.
Have you been back to Berlin?
Yes, I was back once. Found the place where I lived. The stairs are still there. Half the apartments are there on the one side, but the apartments on our side were not there anymore.
They were bombed, or?
Most likely, yes.
When did you go back?
In 1973. That was the first time I met my father, and he came back with me to Berlin. It was quite an emotional experience in the first place to meet this guy.
So your parents divorced when you were 1, and your mother and your mother's family were not then in touch with your father at all?
No touch whatsoever. I knew, somehow I knew that he'd come to Palestine at that time. In 1934 he went to Israel, Palestine. And I never knew exactly where he went, what happened to him. And my mother's family was absolutely against that I would ever look for him. I mean, my uncle, when I already knew that he was in Australia, which I found out just by chance, somehow my uncle must have had an inkling. And he said, if you ever get in touch with your father, for me you don't exist anymore. Because he is responsible for the death of your mother, which of course is Hui Belui. But to my mind, and so I was in touch with my father, and as later on, after I was in Israel already, after I was married, after I had already 2.5 kids, and so every Friday evening when my uncle used to come over to visit us for the Friday night meal, I had to make the house sterile. I had all the letters I had to hide, stamps, phone all my newfound relatives and tell them not to phone on a Friday, not to come on a Friday, not to do anything on a Friday in the vicinity of where I live.
And that worked too?
Yes, I mean, I have a little bit of a guilty conscience, but to the day he died, my uncle never knew that I was in contact with my father. And actually my uncle brought me up in the States, and he paid for part of my stay in England.
Okay, let's go back a little bit after Kristallnacht. your parents kept you in for 3 days.
Yes.
And then they sent you to a different school?
Apparently, because I remember going to a different school.
What do you remember about this school?
I remember the class, but I don't remember much. There's certain things which stand out in my mind. For instance, Crystal Night stands out in my mind because on the third day when I went down, I saw the broken windows of the Jewish stores. I saw a Jewish storekeeper who had a stationery store scrubbing the sidewalk where it was written a dirty Jew or something, because he happened to be married to a Christian woman, so they didn't smash his store, but they wrote all sorts of nasty things on the pavement in front of the store, and I saw all the jeering Germans around it. This I remember distinctly. That's again one of those photos that's stuck in my mind.
What's the next
I
memory
think the
like
next is
that?
when I left Germany. I remember the night before, my mother said, look, you're going for a train ride, you're going to go to another place. And I don't know what she said else. I have no recollection. She said, we're going to see you, it's going to be okay. Most likely she did. The only thing that bothered me, I had to choose which toys to take and which toys not to take.
What toys did you choose?
Very little, I don't remember. I know I had a big fire engine which I could sit on and travel on. And that was out of the question. It was even though I was a 7-year-old kid, it wasn't so small. It had a ladder that came up to my head. It was high, and it had a steering wheel, and you could steer the thing. And that was it. No toys.
Well, a few toys, small toys, but not the fire engine.
Yeah.
And do you remember do you remember anything leading up to, did you go to the Jewish Community Center in Berlin to register?
No, this I don't remember. I only remember going to the train station in the morning. I don't know how we got there, but on the other hand, I remember, I can distinctly describe the stairs going up to the station, up to the platforms. I don't remember going into the train, but on the other hand, I knew that my mother was going to take a taxi to another station on the east side of Berlin, on the west side of Berlin, to have another look. And I was looking out the window and I saw her running along the platform, but she never saw me. And that was it. That was the last time I saw her.
So it was in the morning, and do you remember which station in Berlin you went to?
No.
And who, your mother and your aunt and your grandfather, or just your mother? Or?
No, I think only my mother was there with me.
And did you have a little suitcase and a rucksack, or?
No, I had a suitcase most likely, but I don't remember exactly what I took with me.
And do you remember she went onto the do you remember parting from her? Or?
Not exactly.
What exactly?
Well, I know that I can't recollect if we hugged or kissed or whatever. This I don't remember now. Most likely we did. I mean, it's natural.
Right. Do you remember how you felt? Were you?
But I wasn't unhappy.
Mm-hmm. And she had only told you the day before.
Yes.
So. And you remember the stairs going up to the platform. Do you remember getting on the train?
No, but I remember the window that I looked out of to see her. This I remember.
A big window?
When I get the big window, I remember distinctly she came from right to left. It's funny, but you have certain recollections which stick in your mind, and everything before or after is a complete blank. Yeah.
Then what's the next thing you remember?
Traveling on the train, inspections by the Gestapo, and then also a very funny thing, I remember we got fruit. I can describe you the paper plates that we got them on. And I remember there were plums on there and some other stuff, but otherwise not. Then I remember getting to the border for the last inspection. I remember that everybody was quiet, nobody was talking. We crossed the border, and apparently the elder kids knew what was going on because they all burst out into cheers and yells and screams. I just took it into my stride, okay. At nighttime already, it was dark already, we got to the harbor. I don't remember getting onto the boat, but I remember my bed on the boat and the double-decker beds, remember the cabin. I don't remember getting off the boat, but I remember being on a large field and somebody picked me up and took me to London. these were very, very distant relatives. I mean, even with the binoculars, you can't see how close they were.
So do you think they had been contacted?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I wasn't there with them for a very long time because 5 weeks later the war broke out. And then I was evacuated again, this time with all the English kids from London. And there was a problem because I was the only one that spoke German and the only one that didn't speak English, together in one combination. And there was a teacher there, a young girl who had been an au pair in Germany, and she spoke German. And she was taken to this vicarage in a village which at that time had no electricity and no sewage. And it was a very primitive affair. But the vicarage was okay. It was a big, big mansion dating back 1,000 some years with 16 bedrooms and something like that. And we were put up there. I remember I went to school slowly, because all of a sudden there was a big influx of kids. There wasn't enough room for the kids from the village and for all these kids that came. So one day we learned in school, one day they learned in school, which I think the net result was that nobody learned anything.
What was the name of this village?
Barnack. I'm going there now, and I'm going to meet some people there that I haven't met before, and I probably will meet people that were the same age as I was when I was there, because the daughter of the gardener of the vicarage remembers me. And I managed 2 years ago to find, through one of the gentlemen in this village, the daughter of the vicar. She's now 70. And I contacted her, and she's living in Wales, and I'm going there the day after tomorrow. And I spoke with her on the phone, and she's 70 now, and she was quite a character. And certainly not the type of a vicar's daughter. And I think she's quite excited as I am.
What do you say?
Well, she was a tomboy, and she was older by 2 years, and she did quite some nasty things, I must admit. She liked, not only for me, she teased everybody in the house there and played pranks, and I mean, she never played with dolls or anything like that, even though she had a room full of dolls. Always climbed up on the roof, always scratched knees and stuff like that. And of course I was 2 years younger and dragged along.
And now, did you live in the vicarage?
Yes.
And how many of you were there?
No, only I.
Only you?
Yes. Then I had a relative. I went back to London, and then the Blitz started, and in the middle of the Blitz I just decided that I'd like to go back to the vicarage. That was too much. And I wrote him a letter, and I was accepted back with a cousin of mine. Mm-hmm. And but afterwards he had to leave because the Canadian Army took over the vicarage as a headquarters for the preparation for the invasion of Europe. The vicarage was, secluded, had a big high wall around most of it, so nobody knew what was going on inside.
And is it Barnet? Is it on the coast? Or
No, that's not far from Stanford, Peterborough. Okay. And what happened was this: I had quite a shock. I had to leave the vicarage because he had to move to a place where there wasn't enough room. And there happened to be a teacher who came up from London with the school, who was a Jew, the only Jew in the village, and he was religious. And he decided apparently that it's not nice for a nice Jewish boy like me going to church every day for 3 years, and after summer I have to go back and become a Jew again. Anyway, he took me in. So on Sunday I went to church and prayed, and on Saturday I couldn't put on the light, and I couldn't write, and I couldn't do anything which is not allowed according to the Jewish law. But I survived.
Now, had you been Jewish, religiously observant in your family in Berlin?
No, I mean we didn't Shabbat candles we didn't light, but Hanukkah and Pesach we did keep.
You kept in the home.
Yes.
And did you go to a temple as well, or?
I think maybe once or twice.
In your life, or once or twice a year?
It's nearly similar. You see, I told that already yesterday. I said, we have a problem living in Israel. I've been living in Israel for 50 years. See, we don't, even if I'm not religious, I'm Jewish because I'm living in a country which basically is Jewish. So even though I'm not religious, the stores are closed on a Saturday whatever you do, or mostly closed. The holidays are Jewish holidays if you like it or not. And I spoke in front of an audience yesterday, said people to hear what's going on in Israel. And I said, I will put it quite blankly. I don't feel a refugee. I don't feel I'm in a foreign country like the guys in the States who always have to say I'm accepted. And I don't give a damn. I'm living in Israel. I'm a citizen of Israel like any other country, like any other citizen in any other country. That doesn't mean everybody has to come to Israel. Everybody can do whatever the hell he wants. But I think today, I think it's the only place. I wouldn't be able to live outside of Israel again. I mean, I like traveling. I have good contact with people, but to permanently live, I don't think I'd like to live in another place with all the troubles we have. And believe me, we have a lot of them. Yeah.
And do you think you have that feeling from your experiences as a refugee child? Is that part of it?
No. I think, it's a funny thing. I didn't even want to come to Israel in 1949. I finished high school in West Orange, New Jersey. And my uncle also was a sorry affair. He divorced his wife, never mind the reasons. But it was a family feud and had to do with family that was survived and came over to the States. Anyway, he said, that's it. I think also that his two sisters died in a concentration camp, sort of gave him a twinge in the heart or something, and he became sort of a Zionist. And he took me to Israel in 49, and I was living in England with under austerity, and now I was in the States with plenty, and I go back to austerity after 4 years or 5 years, why should I? But after being for about 1 year in Israel, I nearly went back, because that was part of the agreement. If I don't like it, he pays for my ticket back to the States. And I very nearly utilized that, because I couldn't find work and I had no money left, and I said, what the hell, what am I doing here? And then I got into a group that put up a new settlement, and that was a different spirit already. And then I stayed and joined the Navy and met my wife. She's a Sabra. So slowly I became an Israeli, and that's the way I am. No question of Zionism as you see it in the States. That's my country. I live there. I served in the army there. I can complain whatever I want to complain about, and the hell with everybody else. They don't have to think, am I Jewish? Can I say that? Will somebody else say? Doesn't make a damn bit of difference. You laugh.
No, it's interesting. I'm not laughing.
No, because the opinion, probably people don't express themselves that way.
No, I think that's wonderful. I mean, you should be happy and committed to the place where you live.
I'm not committed, okay. I think also the Jews in America are committed to the States. I mean, you have a guy like Dennis Ross, he's a Jew, and he's committed to the United States. And a lot of others, like Sandy Berger in the White House. Mm-hmm. But that's not the point. The point is that any small suspicion of being Jewish in a foreign place in Israel, it doesn't exist. And that's it.
Right, because no matter what your observance,
whatever you do, you're still a citizen, and you can't get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Or from it, to be exact.
Right. All right, we'll come back to Israel, but going back to England in the vicarage, your cousin, was he older than you?
Yes, by about 3 or 4 years.
And how had he gotten out of Berlin?
Oh, he was born in England.
Oh, he was born in England, an English cousin who went to the vicarage to get out of London.
Yes.
I see. And were you in touch with your mother or your aunt when you were in
Impossible. I only got in, the whole time I was in England, I got one letter, probably in 1942, through the Red Cross, 25 words. And unfortunately, I don't have that letter anymore, but I mean, there wasn't much, oh yes, we're feeling well and everything is okay and don't worry, and that was the end of 25 words.
Right. But she was in touch with your uncle in the States, so she knew that you were safe.
Yes. Yes.
And then after the war, did you search for her? Or?
No. Didn't know what to do, but most likely my uncle did, so I mean, it wasn't up to me in the first place. But when we had our reunion here 10 years ago, I decided that I found out that I have to look for something and look for her, where she ended up, because I didn't know. And I found in the Yad Vashem in Jerusalem 2 heavy books listing all the German Jews that perished, and I found her name there and my aunt's name, and it was written Auschwitz, but it wasn't written what happened to them or when they got there, whatever. And they decided that one of these days I'd have to go to Auschwitz for a visit, which I did about 5 years ago. And I was only in Poland for 12 hours. That's all. I came through Czechoslovakia, went in, stayed a day in Auschwitz, and came back out again. And luckily, a friend of my wife's happened to be there too. He was Polish and looking for roots, and we met him at Auschwitz. When he speaks Polish, and of course Hebrew, thank God. So I asked him, look, maybe you can find out if there are documents here or an archive, and we found the archives, and they opened it. Everything is locked up there, full secrecy, and or privacy. And we got up into the archives, and he translated, and the woman found out what they wanted, if they have anything. Oh, just a moment. And 5 minutes later, she came back with a card with my mother's name on it, another card with my aunt's name, or everything is registered, the date they were transported, when they arrived, and then another copy of a page from a sort of a book which listed the specific transport, leaving Berlin on this and this date with so many women, so many men, so many children, from number so-and-so to number so-and-so, how many were taken to forced labor, how many were exterminated on the spot. I don't know what group my mother was in, and I don't know, that was the end. I couldn't find out anything after that. That was impossible. But I must admit, whatever I saw in Auschwitz, it's not nice to say I was cool, and it didn't touch me at all. But when I saw this card personally, there I sort of, choked a little bit.
Just a little bit, though.
Well, a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because that was very personal.
Okay.
That was the end of the line.
You took that trip with your wife?
Yes.
And was that when you went to Berlin as well, or?
No. No, that was in sometime in the early 1994, I think, 5 years ago.
So, so you didn't leave Israel and just go to Poland for 12 hours. You went elsewhere in the area as well.
I'll be honest with you. I went to an exhibition, a professional exhibition in Hanover. I decided that I'd have to go to Auschwitz. I just have to know exactly when I can fit it into the right slot. I was in an exhibition in Hanover, and then after the exhibition, I went traveling to Hungary, and that was already part of the plan, that when I go through Hungary, Czechoslovakia, go through Czechoslovakia until I'm opposite Auschwitz, cut through, up and out and back. And then I went to Vienna and back to visit relatives in Munich and came back to Israel. Even when I got to Auschwitz, it wasn't a smooth ride. Already on the border, I had a hired car, and the guard stopped me there. They couldn't speak English at all, and he started yelling and screaming. I don't have the door. Didn't have. He said, "Green card, green card," and I got mad. I said, "Green card in the United States if you want to work, not here." And he didn't know what I was. Anyway, I said, "Take me to your office," and I banged on the table, and I said, "Listen, I'm going to turn this place upside down. I'm going to Auschwitz for 12 hours, and I'm going, whatever, for a day. And if you don't let me through, I'm going to turn this place upside down." And I guess he took me seriously, and I went.
So, let's go back again to, you stayed at the vicarage, yes. And you had elementary and high, the equivalent of high school, or?
No, not there. High school I did in the States. Okay. But in Barnack I went to this Jewish family, and he was a physics teacher, and he was called back to London to teach radar, the principles of radar, to the sailors of the British Navy, and things were quieting down, and so the whole family went back, and they took me with them. And then we ran away from London again when the V1s were flying over us, and when the V2s we went away again. This once to relatives in Manchester, once to relatives in Bournemouth.
Relatives of this Jewish family.
Of this Jewish family, yes. And then in the very beginning of 1945, we got a notice that my papers, which have been running already through all the different channels for 2 years already, and I will probably be going in sometime in the future to the United States. But they can't give me any notice because there's a war on, and all shipping lanes are highly secret, and departures are highly secret. So, but holy smokes, I'm not living in London anymore. My stuff is in London. I'm living in Bournemouth. I can't do that all without some sort of a notice. So I said, they told us that anyway, we'll give you a notice when to be on 24-hour call. So I remember on a Monday we got a call to be ready any time to leave Bournemouth. And on the Thursday I said, okay, that's it. So we took the early train to London, cruised it, packed my stuff, said goodbye to relatives, to this aunt that I stayed 5 years before. 12 o'clock at night, got onto the train and headed up north for Greenock in Scotland, and from there we went to Halifax. Also, you know, if you look at it, a kid's experience, we got off the train. I always wanted to be on the sea, and we were put on this ship, which was to my mind quite big, but we weren't taken to the cabins. I didn't know what. I said, holy smokes, I mean, the ship is about 10 meters wide and I don't know, a good 60 or 70 or 80 meters or maybe more long. And why don't we move? Well, we started to sail, and I said, oh, well, what about the cabin? And then I found out that we're going to one of the biggest troop ships in the world at that time, the SS Aquitania, 46,000 tons. All of a sudden, this wall, you know, was on the side of us. And then I went on, there were 6,000 Canadian and American soldiers on it, going back, and 200 passengers, just to give you the proportion. Mm-hmm. And I remember we had quite a lot of arms on board, 6-inch guns, 4-inch guns, machine guns. And we had a speed which we could use to outrun any submarine which would chase us. But there was an ambush one day out of Halifax. And there's also, I remember I was, you know, being a kid alone of 13, I was sort of taken as a mascot by the British Army, by the Canadian Army, and I went with them to the movies and to the wherever I went, and I was playing cards then in the evening with 3 British officers. It sounds as if I'm a big gambler, but anyway, I was having a hell of a good time, and all of a sudden there was depth charges and shooting and whatever, and I was, you know, action, something to look forward to, and all of a sudden I hear my voice over my name over the address system that I have to go back to my cabin. And I didn't do that. About 5 minutes later, 2 military policemen picked me up by my ears and just carried me with my feet dangling on the floor back to the cabin. That was one thing. Another thing, when we got to Halifax, the first priority was take off wounded soldiers. Because we were next to the wharf, and there was a Red Cross train next, stationed next to it, and they asked for volunteers. Nobody's telling me what to do. I go down to where the people gathered for voluntary stretcher bearing. The officer said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to carry a stretcher." I said, "Do me a favor, just go back to your cabin."
So there was no adult who was responsible for
There was an
you
adult that was supposed to be theoretically responsible. I saw him once, or she once on the whole trip. It wasn't her fault. I just wasn't there to be looked on. Listen, I'm a 13-year-old kid traveling over the ocean, war on, action. It's a hell of a good thing, you know. You don't know what, I was too young to know what risks we can take.
Mm-hmm. No, it's an adventure.
And then I got to Montreal, and we got a box with cigarettes and chocolates when we got onto the boat in England, and $40. $40 in the beginning of 1945 was a hell of a lot of money.
Do you know who that money came from? Or?
No, but I know that every civilian and soldier who got on the ship got the same box, because we were actually civilians under the military under the military organization. We had to do exactly what we were told and everything. So of course I sold the cigarettes to the soldiers, made some money this way, got to Montreal. We had 8 hours free. Again, nobody to look after me. And I hadn't seen pineapples, oranges, chocolate, ice cream. Anyway, to make a long story short, at 8:30, the train left Montreal for New York, and I got onto the train, put my baggage down, went to the toilet, and was there until the next morning. And next morning, my uncle picked me up. And that was also an interesting thing. When I left England, I had a bicycle finally. And I wanted to take it with me. And they said, no, you don't have to take it. And in America, everybody has cars. I said, okay, a car is better than a bicycle. My uncle picked me up at Grand Central Station in New York. And we hugged and whatever. And they said, now we go to this station, we take a train home. Oh, no car. I was promised a car. What happened to the car?
Did you say that?
No, I thought it. So we got to Newark, and then my uncle said to me, okay, from here on I parked my car here, and from here we go home by car. Oh boy, that was a relief. There is a car.
Mm-hmm. Would you like me to get you a glass of water? Okay, so your uncle picked you up by train and car, and where did he take you?
West Orange, New Jersey. And they also only got a notice 24 hours before. That means until the ship docked in Halifax, they didn't know I was on the way. Again, because of secrecy. There was a war on. And they had tickets for a Broadway show exactly for that night. So they telephoned whoever they telephoned, and they got me a ticket. I got home, they took a good shower, took all my short pants, which I wore in England, and threw them in the garbage, was fitted out with long pants, a jacket, a tie, and whatever. Became an American.
And did you go to school then in
Yes.
West Orange?
Yes. Went to 8th grade for the last 2 months. And then I started high school and finished high school.
And you're going to a high school reunion?
I'm going to a high school reunion, 50th reunion. You know, it's a funny thing. The letter came from the States, and I get a letter once in a while from the States, but this one was from West Orange, and my wife looked at it and said, you don't have to open it. I said, why not? He said, I know exactly what's in there. I said, what? She said, a high school reunion. It was. And it was, there was a girl, she's now about 67, 68. She wrote and told us that there's a reunion, and I had to fill out a form. And there was a telephone number. Now I don't waste time writing letters. If I can phone, I phone. It's not today it's not such a big deal to telephone. It doesn't cost so much. And we had a chat, and it came out she's Jewish, and the other woman who's arranging is also Jewish. You know, that's interesting because we spoke about the Jewish kids, and we were a class of 254 kids. I said, there are a lot of Jews in our class. He said, now come on, there were only about 4 or 5. I said, listen, I know already at least 20. And she says, well, I'm Jewish too. And the other one said, what I want to say is, even at that time, in our particular area, being a Jew didn't, with all that there's anti-Semitism all over the place, in this particular case, nobody really associated the name with any religion or whatever.
But when you got there, I mean, were you the only... by then you were speaking English.
Yes, but English.
Right, so how did your new classmates in New Jersey...
Oh, they liked that.
Are you meaning that literally or sarcastically?
No, I'm serious. Even in my yearbook I said, it's a shame that you lost your English accent.
And did they ask you did they think you were an English boy, or did you talk about where you were?
No, I didn't talk about it, and nobody asked me. I mean, I came there, went to school, spoke the language, a little bit with a different accent, but did the same things that those kids did, and I don't think I can be so proud of some of the things I did, but we're quite a mischievous gang. I mean, you know what Halloween is.
Yes.
But you know what Mischief Night is.
No.
No. Oh, this is it. Mischief night is the night before Halloween, when the older kids do all sorts of things which shouldn't be done. And in West Orange, I know that the police used to go out in patrol cars. Any kid from 12 up was put into the car, taken to jail, and without any, registry. It was just released in the morning. That's it, finished.
And what was your role in this?
Let's not go into too many details. Okay.
So you went through high school and you graduated high school, all living with your uncle
Yes.
and his family.
Yes.
And then after high school?
I worked as a gardener for some time. I didn't know exactly. I registered for college, but never got to it because we came to Israel.
And this was, your uncle became suddenly a Zionist.
I don't know if suddenly or not suddenly. I really don't know. I think because in a way, he left everything to his wife. After 2 years, he was already sick and tired of all the haggling. And also with it was also tragic. His son was in the American army, and he was my.
More water?
No, it's okay.
We were on how you got.
So what I was saying is
as
that another thing that hit my uncle very hard is, my uncle had worked in Russia as an American in 31 and 30. There was a big depression in the States, and by profession he was a tool and die engineer, which I learned from him afterwards, of course, or because of him, and. The Russians came over in 30 and asked for American engineers to come and work in their factories, to boost production and redesign things and stuff. And he went. He had a bloody good salary there and had a nice place and a servant for the kids and a car and a chauffeur. And after 1 year, he decided to continue until 1938, when in 38 they took him to the border, no car, no money, no nothing, and a boot over into Poland, and then he went back to the States without anything. And he said he thanks God for one thing, he came out alive, the rest doesn't matter. Anyway, why do I say that? Because of that, his son spoke perfect Russian. He spoke perfect English because he went to school in the States. I think he was born in the States. And he spoke perfect German because that was the origin of his family's, the family language. So he was first in the Air Force, and then they transferred him, I don't know exactly what unit, became a translator in the American Army, was the official translator for General Lucius Clay, and signed then afterwards on to continue as a civilian connected to the German Army after the war as a translator. And there met a woman 10 years older than him, with 3 kids, whose husband was in the German Army and had been killed in Russia, and they married, which I think was quite a shock to my uncle. That's another reason that he decided that he's going to Israel. I mean, I can't be sure because we never spoke about it, but I have a feeling that had a lot to do with it. And also because my aunt was already in the stages of getting a divorce from my uncle, and there was a fight between, well, let's say not a fight, but my aunt was trying to pull her son in her direction, and my uncle didn't pull so much. He wasn't such a character, who would sort of do monkey business and try. He said, okay, wherever he wants to go, he goes. And then when he came back to the States, and then he sort of changed sides from my aunt's side to my uncle's side. But I think my uncle, it hurt him that his son married a German, a Christian, married 10 years older, 3 kids.
Did he keep in touch with him? Or?
No. He came to Israel, nothing. And I think once there came a letter that his son was in financial troubles and his wife had cancer, and if he could help, I think my uncle never answered that. So he married again in Israel, and with a woman 25 years younger than he, who had a small baby. And he was happy with them. They were married until he died. She also had a story. She survived Germany because she was an expert at precision grinding, and she was working in a factory making bearings for tanks. And when they wanted to take her, the department manager said, if you take her, I close up the department. And that's the only reason she survived, actually. I think that's the reason.
And so you and your uncle set off together alone to Israel?
Yes.
And where did you arrive?
Haifa. Didn't fly at that time much.
Right. And what did you do when
Well, I had
you
about
were how
200,
old then?
I was 17 and a half, a little bit more. And I had about $200 in my pocket, which I earned in the last 2 months, or month. And after a week, the money was disappearing, and I tried to get into a kibbutz, something. And my uncle got a job right away in the military industries, because they were looking for people like him. And then I didn't get anywhere. I was out of money. And I didn't even have money to go to Tel Aviv to my uncle to get more money. And I was stuck in Haifa. And I remember I went to the Jewish agency. They didn't pay for me to come to Israel. But they said, listen, now I've got problems. So they gave me £5 at that time. I got to Tel Aviv and asked for that ticket that I said, I'd like to go back to the States. So my uncle said, listen, maybe you can, also I was for a couple of weeks on another sort of, not settlement, but what they call hachshara, where people were training. And those from Americans, which I'd met on the boat. And they also went back to the States very quickly, you know. They thought they were coming to Israel, glory and famous and whatever. I don't know what they thought. Here, there they have to work, and that's it. So I said, I'd like my ticket back, because I have nothing to do here. I said, look, one more chance, maybe. I'll give you the ticket, but try once more, which I did. So I went back to Benyamina. It's a small township between Haifa and Tel Aviv, and went to another group which was made up of Israelis. And I said, I'd like to join your group, because what happened in the kibbutz is come back in 2 weeks, come back in 3 weeks. I said, I don't have a penny in my pocket, but you come back in 2 weeks. I went to this group and I said, can I join you? I said, yes. When do you want to join? I said, now. I said, okay. So I stayed.
And where was this?
Well, we were in Benyamina for a couple of weeks, and then we went to the Galil and put up an absolutely new settlement from scratch. First a few tents, then a few wooden houses, the roof. And I stayed there a year, and then I had an argument with the secretary of the settlement, because he didn't want to give me leave, and I had already 20-some Saturdays accumulated. I said, I'd like to go and visit my family. And he says, no. And our truck was leaving at 1 o'clock at night for Haifa to pick up stuff in the morning from the harbor. And I had already arranged with the driver to go with him, and the secretary said to the driver, don't let him get on the truck. I said, I can't, it's his as it is yours. So the secretary said, got mad, said, if you go, you don't have to come back. I said, okay. So I went, and I got to Mishmaim, to the kibbutz where my uncle was. And he said, how long are you staying? I said, as long as you want. He said, what do you mean? I said, I can leave any time. I'm not staying in the place where I am now. And so I stayed for about 4 or 5 days, went back north, and said, oh, well, and they just as if nothing had happened. I said, I'd like to take my stuff. Where's my laundry? I need it. I said, tomorrow you'll get it. I said, they said, why do you need it? I said, I'm leaving. He said, oh, come on. I said, no. Once you said you don't have to come back with me, that's the last word. And that was it. I didn't go back. Left, and that's it. And then from the kibbutz in Mishmamek, I joined. I mean, I was conscripted into the Navy. And then already I was just, more or less, as I felt myself as an Israeli, and everything was running as it is until this day.
And when did you meet your wife?
In the Navy. I mean, what happened was this, I was already 2 years in the Navy, and I was in charge of a whole department. I had about 36 guys under me, including people who were 10 years older than I and were in the regular force, and I was not in the regular force. I was a conscript, but I was their boss. And then came along a future commander of the Navy. He was only a lieutenant commander, and he gave certain orders which I didn't like. So he said that anybody who's on conscription, not in the regulars, he doesn't have leave every day, 2 days yes, 1 day no, you know. And I said, look, I'm the only guy in the Navy who has this job who's not in the regulars. And I demand not the salary that you can't give me, but at least the things that the other guys get. And if I get leave every day, I won't leave every day. And I decide when I have to stay and when I don't have to stay. And not only that, I have 10 days vacation coming to me on a rest home, and I didn't even get that. So my director officer said, "You'll get that," and I went to the rest home, and that's where I met my wife. She got a pass to go there. She was a wireless operator in the signal corps. And we met there, and she had another boyfriend at that time, and then somehow we met again in the summer, 6 months later, and then her father died, so I paid a visit. I don't know exactly what. Anyway, from there it sort of rolled on, you know. I mean, I remember the first time, you know, it's not nice to say maybe, but the first time I saw her after I was discharged 6 months later, I was sitting at the YMCA in Jerusalem, and she happened to walk in, you know, we talked and laughed and so forth and went out. And of course, as two young guys, we discussed, shall we date her, shall we not, what does she look like, she looks like that, she's like that, you know, you can just imagine. But I'm with it until today.
And you have children?
3, which are here, as you know.
All 3 of them are here?
3 of them here.
Boys, girls?
3 girls. Or as we say, two daughters and a daughter.
And have you talked to them about your childhood and your kinder transport?
Yeah, in later years maybe. I mean, now the oldest one is already 42, and she has her own kids already. And this one that you saw here also has 2 daughters already. Well, I think they were interested, but they have their own problems and lives to lead. But I decided that this reunion, I would like to take them with me, because that's the last time I can show them what that really means. And I think they hit them quite hard. I think the oldest daughter said to me, these were the 2 most strenuous days I've had in my life. And I think, well, I don't know what's going to come out of it, but I think they got, now they'd hit them what really happened 50, 60 years ago.
And when you say that you wanted them to come because they would find out what it really means?
Yeah, not only what, to hear about something, to be told about something is not the same as coming in contact with the people and experiencing things which, I mean, you can't go back 60 years, but when you see the people who experience this thing, talk about it, and trying to come to grips and hear lectures and stuff like that, it rubs off much better than if you read about it, even if it's your own parents.
Mm-hmm. And you were somehow involved before this reunion, because you spoke at the reunion yesterday?
Well, what happened was this. I read 10 years ago when Bertha started this whole business, I saw an ad in the Jerusalem Post. And
what did the ad say?
Anybody who was a kinder transport person and would like to come to the reunion in London is welcome to do so.
Were you surprised to see an ad?
Yes, I was, yes. And I right away signed up, and I took my middle daughter with me. She's here too also. She's also here. And we came, and it was really interesting. And I mean, I didn't know any of the kids, but I was interested. I tried to find out who was on the same boat as I was, which I did. And what happened to other people. We heard stories of other people, which, I mean, I was lucky. I really didn't have such a bad life at all, except that I wasn't living at home. And then I sort of continued, and I had contact with Inga, her sister, who's in charge in Israel. And we met sometimes and so forth. And then she asked me to write my story, which I did, which is in the book. I don't know if you've got the book.
The reunion commemorative. Yeah,
the gift. I had to pay 10 a gift for slight consideration. And I wrote their story, What is Fate? And I was limited to space, and that tells also, the whole thing is that I wrote it because I wanted to show, because I lost my mother, I found my father, because if I would have stayed in Germany, I would have never known my father. So I lost one and got another. And, okay, we were a little bit active, and I wrote for her book, the other book too, a little bit, and I think that we should, I mean, it's the last chance to really get this thing documented. About a year ago, I went to Yad Vashem, and try to convince them that our particular experience is something different, and it should also be recognized and not documented, but what I thought we would put up a sort of a plaque or something, and I told the women there, they don't have to pay anything, I'll collect the money for it and everything. They couldn't have cared less, they didn't. I mean, I don't understand these people, they weren't just interested. I said, you're amongst all the other kinder who perished. And I said, holy smokes, there were kinder who joined the British Army afterwards and were killed. Some of them already disappeared. And that was part of the Jewish history, a special aspect of 10,000 kids who had a different experience than maybe some others. Maybe the other experiences were more drastic, more severe, more, I don't know what. But it's a facet of the Holocaust. That's the way I think. Maybe a more happier side, but still should be commemorated, to my mind, which you're doing.
No, I think it's true that the kinder transport, certainly, Bertha getting the first reunion was an amazing thing, yes. Because 10 years ago, no one had outside of, and even some, were you friends with other kinder transport?
No.
Before you saw that ad, did you expect to see kinder transport in print at all?
No. I think there's another thing to this too. I think it should pay tribute, it does pay tribute to all those people who were not Jews who helped. I mean, they helped because they wanted to help and not because they wanted recognition for it. But in retrospect, I think today we owe it to them that they also get some sort of recognition that there were people who thought otherwise. I mean, the Quakers and this guy who spoke.
Nicholas Winton.
Yes, I mean, this guy, he's a character.
That's true. And how today are you or your children? Are you active as religious Jews?
No.
None.
Very much not.
And that's how you chose to raise your children?
They can live whichever they want. I mean, my middle daughter wouldn't eat not non-kosher, but she wouldn't eat pork, for instance. Never. My oldest one and my youngest one, they eat whatever comes along, and so do I, and so does my wife. Everybody in his own way. My middle daughter is also a little bit more religious-minded. If anybody will become religious in our family, which I don't think it'll ever happen, the first candidate is my middle daughter, because she's inclined that way. She's also the person who keeps the family history. See, all the other ones are busy with their jobs. She's also busy with her job, and she doesn't have any kids. She's not married. And the other ones, they got their kids to take care of and this to take care of, and that's the way. And I think that's a personality, of course, also. But we rely on her to have all the family history, the family tree, and she does it very well.
That's good. I think, is there anything else, before we look at your photographs, is there anything?
What do you want to know?
Well, what would you like to tell me?
Well, nothing in particular, except that, life goes on in Israel as usual. I did my 30-some years military service. Finished, I'm supposed to be a pensioner, but I still work about 9 or 10 hours a day.
Doing what?
I had my own machine shop, and this I gave up when I was 65. So I decided no more clients, no more shifts, no more anything that's connected. I have an engineering company. Sounds big, but actually it's only me and my wife. And I sell hours of brain work or hand work, whoever wants to buy it. And I'm working now at a factory. I sell my hours to a factory, and they keep me there 9 hours a day.
Yes, it's hardly retired.
Yes, and not only that, I made a fatal mistake. Maybe they sent me to the States on condition that I stay there for 2 years. I have to study some machinery there and do something for them, which I did, because I said, what the hell, if I'm going to work anyway, and then I get sent to the States for that, so why not? But, I do it. And that's it.
And do you think it's important that future generations know of this kinder transport?
Well, let's be honest. I think so, yes, but I'm prejudiced. I don't even know how important it is in the whole thing. I don't even know what's going to... In 100 years, I don't even know if anybody will know what it's all about. I mean, I can tell you in macro and small, a thing that I had 10 years ago. When I was in a school in Kusa, not far from here, I was 13 already. No, I was still 12, sorry. We adopted a minesweeper from the Dutch Navy. The Dutch Navy, which was in England fighting against the Germans. And we collected woolen hats and I don't know what. And in thanks, the guys made a model of their minesweeper. And they came to the school to present it. Now, being of German origin, I was supposed to be able to speak German, which I didn't, or not much. And since German and Dutch is supposed to be similar, which it isn't, I was the one who was who was accepting the present from them. I have a photograph, I think I even have it here. And I have this photograph at home. And 10 years ago, I took my middle daughter to the school where I learned 50 years before. And I went to the headmaster and I said, look, it's going to sound a little funny, but I studied in the school 50 years ago, and I'd like to show my daughter where I learned. So it's okay, I'll give you guides. The 2 10-year-olds took me to the school and showed me where I... And then I said to him, look, there must be a model of a boat here someplace. He says, how do you know? I said, I know the story. He said, but there isn't, you're right. Everybody knows that there was a model of a minesweeper here in the school. There is no model, it disappeared. Nobody knows the story behind it. And what we did, we told all the kids to write the story, what they think was behind this boat and what's the story. I said, listen, I don't have to think, I can tell you the exact story. I took out the photograph and he says, holy smokes. And he took it all down. He said, you've solved that problem. So that means who knows what will happen in 50 years. Maybe they'll tell stories, maybe someone will come up with a photograph and say, look, I was there with my parents or my grandparents at the reunion. I heard all about it, who knows.
Okay, why don't we look at some
okay.
of the things that you brought.
Okay, I have to shut this one off too, okay?
Yeah.
I should have put that my camera because it's a little bit better than that one. No, it doesn't make any difference. We just could have copied it. And, it's a little bit of a mess because everybody took out the photographs and put them back in the wrong place.
Oh no!
So but never mind. First of all, I sent they took a copy of the photograph of the boat and tried to trace the I don't have the original photograph with me, and trace the people at the school at that time. So here you have a sort of a photocopy with the boat and the Dutch sailor and that guy with the short pants, that's me.
Oh yeah.
And all the kids, and now he wrote up there that he found this one and this one and this one, but nobody was particularly interested in, sort of talking about it. But it was quite interesting how he all of a sudden, when he heard about the boat, that his ears pricked up,
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
That's England. Where the hell is Germany? I don't know.
Have you been showing them to people over the past 2 days?
No.
Oh, it's just your daughters who've been taking them out and putting them away.
No, but I thought maybe that if somebody wanted for an interview,
Right.
That's me in Germany, the taller guy. I don't know, just a moment, I don't know, it's written in the back, but that's about 36, 37.
Put it down because of the reflection. And who's the shorter guy?
No idea.
Just a little focusing question here.
Maybe I should put the thing over there that you don't have such a lousy background.
Oh, it's all right.
It'll be okay. Okay.
There we go. I just have to get far enough away. Okay, so that's in Germany in 36 or so?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me.
This one.
That's on our porch in Berlin shortly before I left.
And that's your mother?
Yes, and I don't know who the other people are.
Who the baby is? Or
Don't know who the baby is and the other two. I have no idea.
And which one are you?
This one.
Okay.
This one's taken on the same day.
In the same place.
Yeah, again, that's not far from where we lived, but that was about when I was 4 years old or something like that. And this is with my aunt,
Very cute.
and look what happened. And that's my mother.
And how, who had all these photographs?
Well, some of them, I don't remember how I got them all. From relatives in Israel, and my uncle most likely.
Did you?
And that's again my mother and her younger sister and I. But you can't see me there. I was about -3 or 4 months.
Do you remember if you had any photographs with you when you left, or?
No, don't remember. That's Germany. Okay, I'll fix up this mess afterwards. That's already England. That's the way it was at the vicarage, I think. And that's shortly before I came to the States, still in England.
And who's the other boy?
The son of the people I stayed with, the Jewish fellow.
And which one are you, the tall one? Or
I'm usually the tall one,
Okay.
except in this case, because I was 12 and that guy was already 13,
And that's in England as well.
also in England. And here's a typical English photograph of a typical English kid.
Which would be you?
Okay. Next stage, USA.
Okay.
And there I don't have too much. I mean, I have a lot of photographs from the USA, but I didn't bring them with me.
You culled a selection to bring here.
Well, no, I happen to have this one. No, this is from Israel already. What happened here? Oh, well, something got mixed up. I don't know. That I know is from England.
Wait, that you know is from...
From the States.
Right. That's nice. Okay.
That's in the factory, in one of the where I started work in Israel. I don't think you need all of that. This is interesting for a particular reason. That's the first time I went to Eilat in 1950, when there was no highway between Beersheba and Eilat, and it took me 2 days through the desert to get there.
Really?
Yeah, I mean it.
Okay, and you were thirsty when you got there.
Yes, I sure was. That's my 3 daughters, my wife's mother, my dad, and his wife.
Oh, that's great. And so your whole family got to know your father,
Yes.
as well as your uncle, but separately.
Yes. Very much separately. That's a famous picture of me with the president of Israel, Ben Tzvi. Not that he knew about me much. I don't know if that would be of interest to you.
What?
Once I looked like that.
And when was this?
of the crazy times when I decided to grow a beard.
It's not bad.
Okay?
Yes.
And then, of course, there's one more part there, and that's the Navy career, if you're interested.
Okay, oh yeah.
But it doesn't come out, why? Ah, it's stuck there. Damn it. Well, it started out, let's see. Something missing here, let's have a look. It started out like that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And ended up something. That's by the way in Greece after the earthquake. We took part in the rescue operations in Greece in 1953.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a sailor from the Greek Navy. He died about 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And those are two Jewish girls from Greece.
Mm-hmm.
I was in correspondence with for some time. Nothing came out of it, as you can see. That was quite something, though.
And which one is you? The one leaning over them?
This one over
that
here.
One on the side. Okay.
And well, I don't know if that's interesting. That's on the ship.
Mm-hmm. And is that you or just
No, that's me.
steering the ship?
No, not exactly. Posing for the photograph, I would say.
I know. Okay.
That's on the bridge where I was in charge.
Mm-hmm.
That's in Italy.
And which one is you?
The taller guy.
Okay.
That's a wedding in Haifa, you know, a couple of guys, and then the last one is this one. This I did, was already in reserve duty on the way to South Africa.
And which one is you in this?
The guy with the peaked hat, I think that's this one, no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Also the tall one, it would be.
And again, that's me in Naples on the way to South Africa. I was in the reserves already then. That was after the Sinai campaign.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
3 ex-veterans. All 3 of us were on the same boat. After we were discharged.
Mm-hmm.
What we looked like in civilian life. That's more or less it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, we can fix. You know what? I'll take them all like this, and then arrange them again later. I got some photographs of my mother here when she was 4 years old. That's interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's my mother and her younger sister.
Mm. Okay.
That's my whole family on my mother's side. My grandmother, my grandfather, and the 5 kids during the First World War. So the very small one is my youngest aunt, and the one standing next to her in white, the taller one in white, is my mother, and the woman in the back standing is the oldest sister.
Mm-hmm.
That's she perished in Auschwitz, and she perished in Auschwitz.
And which is your uncle?
My uncle is This one. I mean, they're both my uncles, but that's
But the uncle who-
this one.
Right. Oh, that's wonderful.
And that's my mother in first grade, the one with the X on the chest. That's, I think, in 1904 or something like that.
Right, right. Okay.
So that's it. But you know, that story with the model of the boat, that was something, you know, because when I told him that told him the story of the boat, and it's true, and that I was the receiver, he was as shocked as I was shocked that they didn't know anything about it.
Right, right.
I mean, that was school property. Somebody probably got a liking to the thing and sort of, you know, decided, you know what, that's going to be a nice thing to have at home.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's it. Right?
Okay, yes, that's it. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, what happens? Can we see or buy or whatever?
Okay, let me turn it off.